Good morning and welcome to Carolina Cares, an iHeartMedia production. My name is Tyler Ryan, your host, and today we're going to hear firsthand the story of a conversation that nobody ever wants to have. You've got a perfect life, a family, a job, a beautiful house, a spouse, plans, and one morning you say goodbye to your spouse, they head off to work, you set about maybe making dinner plans or weekend plans or vacation plans, but instead of them coming home from work that day, there's a knock at the door. And the person on the other side is the sheriff and a police chief. And they explain to you in the course of 2.5 seconds how your world will never, ever be the same. It happened to Kassy Alia, whose husband, Forest Acres police officer Greg Alia, was killed back in 2015. Today we're going to talk to her, hear firsthand the minutes it led up to, just after hearing the news, and of course, what she did with the memory, with the pain, with the name, to inspire her to help others in the community. An amazing, amazing project called Heroes in Blue. It's now called Serve and Connect. We're going to talk with Kassy Alia next on Carolina Cares.
Major key alert. Don't ever play yourself. Life is like school. You will be tested, so pass it.
Learn the real major keys to getting to college at GetSchooled.com.
Stay focused. Now that's a major key alert.
Brought to you by Get Schooled and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Carolina Cares. I'm Tyler Ryan, and Wednesday morning, the 30th of September 2015, was an average Wednesday for most of us here in the Midlands and South Carolina. In fact, it was an average start to a day for Greg and Kassy Alia and their family. Greg, a Forest Acres police officer, as he had done 1,000 times before, working a shift, investigating a suspicious call of someone near a bank, near an ATM. Exactly what police officers do every single day, almost routinely, unfortunately, a suspicious man call. Fast forward what probably was seconds, may have felt like hours. Officer Greg Alia from the Forest Acres Police Department lied dying at the Richland Fashion Mall for doing his job. And it's a heartbreaking story to hear, more so to get the call, to be Kassy Alia, who receives a call that morning. And Kassy Alia, the founder of Heroes in Blue, joins me this morning. And first, I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
I truly am.
Thank you. You know, better than most, Tyler.
Yeah, having a little background in the area, and have lost friends the same way. Certainly not someone as close as Greg. But yeah, we've lost friends, military and in law enforcement. Tell me real quick, as best you can, and I don't open up wounds, but I assume probably the chief called you. I mean, what happened? You're doing the dishes. It's a Wednesday morning, and doing your thing. Yeah.
So that morning was Greg's first day back on day shift. They switch off a month on of nights, a month on of days, and got up just like every other morning. We had our son turned 6 months old that day. He was having a hard time sleeping, as many babies do. Mm-hmm. So Sal said, Greg said, I got him, brought Sal downstairs, hung out with him, brought him back upstairs, said, I have to go, kissed my forehead, and he was gone. Mm-hmm. And that morning, it was just like any other morning. I got up, Sal and I went for a run, put Sal down for his nap, was doing some work, and the text messages started to come in. Mm-hmm. Hey, something's happened at Richland Mall. Is everything okay? Is Greg okay? And you learn as a police wife, you can't be scared. I just knew I would find out eventually.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm sure he's fine. I'll hear from him soon. I'm not going to bother him if he's dealing with something. Sal started waking up from his nap, so I went into his room and I was rocking him back to sleep, and more text messages. Mm-hmm. So I started looking on my phone, and my heart started to drop. And then a few moments later, my dog started to bark. And I knew. I walked outside, and I'll never forget Sergeant Lori Tumlin standing at my stairs. Right behind her was the chief, Sheriff Lott, and then 2 victims advocates back in the back. And it's like I can still picture, it was like I was out of body looking down at myself. And Lori looked at me and she said, Kassy, he's gone. It's an indescribable pain.
Yeah, I said I can only imagine. I've lost friends, but losing a child, a husband, a wife, there's something different than that. I mean, where do you go from there? I mean, I'm sure, like, we lose any loved one to cancer, the family's there and the outpouring is there for a minute or two or a day, but eventually people will kind of go back to their lives because they've got their own lives to lead, and it leaves you with a great big hole, right?
You know, I remember those first few hours, it was such a range of emotions, but I remember, like, I was so connected to him. Mm-hmm. It was like we were made of the same stuff or something. You know, I just loved to, like, hold his hand, and I couldn't understand where he was. At that moment, all I wanted was him. Right. He was my best friend. He was my rock. He was the only thing that I needed or wanted, and he was the one thing I couldn't have. And I just remember pounding the ground saying, "Where are you?" Like, I couldn't understand where he was, that he was gone. Mm-hmm. And I also remember this very real fear, like, how am I going to live without him? And, you know, you find if someone were to ask me how I would have responded to losing my husband, there is no way I would have imagined, like, how I would respond. In fact, 9/11 that year, I remember sitting downstairs holding Sal while watching the coverage out of New York, and I just started to weep because I was like, I just couldn't imagine losing Greg and all that those families have given of the first responders and those who were killed in 9/11. It's just, and so I would never have imagined. You can't expect, but I can tell you that we're a whole lot stronger than we think we are. Sure.
You know, and I guess that's it. I mean, you've got a life to live. You've got a son, you know, and I would think that, you know, you've got to stand up and be both that for Sal at this point. And, you know, you would almost be not serving the memory of your loved one, whether it's Greg or whether it's your brother, your son, whatever, if you didn't grab that inner fortitude, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember it was a conscious thought very early on where I was determined that, you know, Sal's life would never be what I would want it to be without, you know, Greg was taken, and we could never bring that back. But I never wanted my pain to become his pain. You know, I wanted him to be able to thrive and be surrounded with love. And I remember a commitment to myself that day that I would do everything in my power to make sure that little boy got everything that he could in this world.
Sure.
And, you know, even just this morning, I was thinking about it as I was driving Sal, that he's my reason for everything. You know, the reason I'm still standing on 2 feet is I want him to have the best life possible and be able to be his best self every day.
Well, as the community wept with you and mourned with you after the passing of Greg, and, you know, we're a large area with a lot of police officers, but anytime there's a hero that's injured or killed, and it happens all too often in this country, but certainly here, we've lost, you know, several in the last few years, you know, law enforcement officers, first responders who are doing just that, go to work, kiss wife and head and leave, and that's the last time. But you very quickly almost became a media icon, but you didn't just curl up in a ball like a lot of people would, and close the door and shut the lights off and quietly figure out what's next. You very quickly stood up and became a voice for families and for law enforcement.
Well, thank you. I'm humbled by that, Tyler. You know, I'm thankful that I felt many things since losing my husband, and I'm grateful that hate and anger have been among the least common emotions. But in those first few hours, I also remember just feeling such anger because, if you recall, it's 2015, so it seemed like every day you turned on the news and there was something negative about police and their relationship with the community, either an officer-involved shooting or a riot or an officer being shot. I mean, it's just one thing after another. And it felt like at that time that you were either for police or against police, and you couldn't be both. And for those that were against police, it felt like you're against all police, including my Greg. And I just, you know, I knew what a great man Greg was, and I knew that he died serving others. And I didn't want his death to become just a tally mark for one side or the other. Too often in these cases, we dehumanize. We forget that lives were lost. Families are broken now. Things that can never be taken back have been taken, you know, and away from us. And I didn't want that to happen with Greg. I didn't want him to become just another notch for one team or another. And so that's why I decided to speak up. I remember, so the press conference happened, and soon after the first call came in, it was the state newspaper. And I said, if you want to hear about Greg, I'll tell you about Greg. And the reporter said that he was surrounded by other reporters who were holding their breath as I spoke, because people don't typically speak out in response to tragedy.
Right.
And, and that's how it went. Anytime there was a chance to speak out, I did. And, I did it for Greg because I wanted to honor his memory. I did it for Sal. I didn't want him to look back on the news. Let's say 15, 20 years old. He wants to look back.
He's going to find that because it's going to be in Google forever. And he's going to, at 10, 11, 12, 15, 18, he's going to wonder about his dad. And he's going to see stuff. And you're right.
I didn't want him to see hate. I wanted him to be able to look back and see only love and learn about his dad. But then, as I share, more than anything, I wanted to fight this divisive narrative. It's dangerous. It causes people to feel pain and hurt and fear, and it can actually lead to very dangerous situations. And I wanted to fight that with every ounce I could, and I wanted to fight it with a loving and humanizing message.
Right. And we live in a very particularly divisive time when you have politicians who are saying, stand up and fight. It's hard looking back, and I don't remember times, maybe the late 60s, such a time when there was such a line, whether it's police versus citizens or Democrats versus Republicans, but has there been like such a divide and a divisiveness back and forth with such anger spewing out? I mean, nobody wants to get stopped by the police. I don't want to pay a ticket. If I get caught doing something stupid, I don't want to go to jail. Okay. There's an adversarial relationship that law enforcement has with the public. That's just a lot of people's contact. Besides a school resource officer or something, a lot of times it's blue lights in the rearview mirror. So it's not necessarily always a positive thing, but I don't remember a time when it's been there's so much anger from both sides. You know what I mean?
I was reflecting on this yesterday. I was thinking back, the divisiveness with police isn't a new thing. You think back to like civil rights era, where there were pretty clear cases of police brutality. So that distrust in law enforcement, especially among minority communities, has existed for a long time. And I think that the recent growth of social media and availability of cell phones and videos has given rise to, igniting that issue, so there's a sense of empowerment in that. But at the same time, we need to be able to use that information in a way that drives change. And I call that like a courage for collaboration during these divisive times, that there needs to be an empathy and understanding for both sides. It's having access to information is powerful and can help bring us closer together. And at the same time, we can't forget that out of, what Greg said, for every negative story you hear in the news, there are thousands of positive stories happening every day that go unnoticed. There are, out of all the cases that police encounter every single day, the number of use of force cases is so low. And now every life is important. And so one person killed is too many. So we should always be working together to reduce that number. But we can't forget all the good at the same time. And that really was what Heroes in Blue was about early on, is that I didn't want to take away from the message of change, but we need to make the good things a part of the conversation too. We need to create a new way of interacting around these issues. And that's what we've stood for. And that new way of interacting, which we've been promoting through Serve and Connect, which is the rebrand of the organization, is that when we work together, we change lives. And so that's what I stand for and believe very strongly.
Speaking with Kassy Alia, the founder of, and we alluded to it, Heroes in Blue, the organization that was created, was founded after the death of her husband, police officer, Forest Acres officer Greg Alia, and her foundation of creating Heroes in Blue. So did somebody come to you and say, hey, we should do this? I mean, where did Heroes in Blue? Did it come to you in your head? I mean, tell me how obviously grassroots, but how it started.
So, I shared those first few hours. I spoke out in the media as I could. And that night was, that morning, 3 a.m. after Greg was killed. So less than 24 hours, I shared a Facebook post and I asked for 2 things. I asked, one, that people share stories about Greg so Sal could learn about the man his father was. And 2, I said that Greg was a hero and many other cops are too. And I proposed the hashtag Heroes in Blue as a way to raise awareness of those good things that go unnoticed. Now, I call it like my pre-widow life. I had a life before I had my job that I was so passionate about. I loved my life. I remember actually driving home from a work trip just weeks before, and I started to cry because I was just so thankful for the life that I had. It was just perfect, my little life. with my family. It was so perfect. So Heroes in Blue was not in the works or in the making. You know, it was just that 3 a.m. reaction. But as time went on, I felt called to do something with it. And so early on, it really focused on celebrating those positive stories that go unnoticed and also rallying community support for law enforcement. And that's where we had the first campaign, our Feed an Officer campaign. Right. The idea was simple. You can go to a restaurant that was participating, donate $1, $2, $10, whatever. And at the end of this 2-week campaign, we'd deliver lunches in appreciation to police on Kassy Alia Day, which is December 14th. Our goal was just to raise enough to bring lunches to the Forest Acres Police Department, which is pretty small.
Sure.
We were so successful that first year, we were able to bring lunches to police, 13 different police stations across the Midlands, and donated over $3,500 in gift cards. This past year was our 3rd annual year. We brought lunches to close to 600 officers, even outside of Richland and Lexington counties, and close to $11,000 in gift cards. And so this is, that demonstration of love and support to our police. Not long after that, as we continued to explore, started having quote unquote board meetings. We just rally together at a bar, figure out what we were going to do here. I don't know. A lot of trial and error figuring it out. But we decided that we wanted to move forward with it becoming a nonprofit. And I was sitting in the Secretary of State's office getting Heroes in Blue incorporated as a nonprofit when I heard the word that an officer had been shot and killed in the upstate. Officer Alan Jacobs left behind 2 young boys and a pregnant wife. And within hours, our team rallied and raised over $193,000 on GoFundMe for his family.
You're sitting there reading that, and I must have just brought every millisecond.
I read about it initially on Twitter. I was immediately transported back to sitting in the rocking chair holding Sal, looking at my Twitter account, seeing that there had been an incident in Richland Mall. It never gets easier. Over the past close to 3 years now, we have had to raise money for too many officers who have been killed in the line of duty or seriously injured. And this idea that time heals all wounds is not real. You learn how to deal with it. Sure. You learn how to move forward. But I feel like to be a really effective, I wouldn't have it any other way, because the power that comes when you're able to help someone else and give back to their families and know that they aren't alone is the most important thing. But and I'm honored we're able to do it, and it's so important, and it's not easy. So that's how we started. We were focused on Heroes in Blue, but I knew, and I don't. You tell me if I'm talking too much, but
no, we're good.
I knew early on that if we really wanted to combat this divisive message, what brought me so much pain in those first few hours, it had to, celebrating our police, rallying community support is so critical. And I knew that we needed to look at the bigger picture if we wanted to bring people together, but I wasn't sure what that bigger picture was really until the trial involving my husband's death. And as I was preparing for that sentencing, so the man who killed my husband received life without parole.
Let me just go ahead and jump off for 1 second on your train of thought. Then, if we just, how do you wrap your, I can't even complete a sentence. How do you wrap your brain around that? That is there forgiveness in there? Is there any emotion? I mean, how do you get ready for the sentencing for the guy who changed your life?
God, Tyler, I survived largely in those first few months by not even acknowledging his existence.
Right.
I couldn't say his name. I wanted to know nothing about him. I didn't want to look at pictures. I didn't want to let that hate control my heart. Like, I was doing all I could to keep it together, and I couldn't enter that darkness. But then I had to. Mm-hmm. Inevitably in these situations, it's up to the state the state as to what they want to do in terms of pursuing what charges they want to pursue. But they do ask for the family's advice, and that's a terribly miserable thing to be asked. What would you want for someone else's life, especially someone else who took everything from you? Every time that I had to meet with the solicitor's office, it was like everything I was doing to stay above water, it was like I was sucked down into this black hole of hate.
Right.
And there was one particularly painful day, and I left, and I was like, I just wish so badly. I wanted to know what Greg would have wanted me to do, and I was like one of the first times I was like, I have no idea what he would want. And so I was like, how am I going to survive this? And I had to drive to Atlanta for work, and I was a wreck. And I started thinking about like, what could you tell Sal about this? Because my greatest fear was, how am I going to sit in this courtroom and face my greatest fear for what could be years at a time and go home and love my son? Like, how am I going to be the mother that he deserves? How am I going to teach him about love and empathy and forgiveness if I can't even find it in my own heart? So I thought about what I could tell him, tell Sal. It just wasn't, it was right, talking about what justice means and the societal process of justice, but like, it just didn't make me feel better. And it wasn't until I was like, how would I feel if I were Jarvis Hall's mother? And immediately I pictured him like Sal, like a little boy, so filled with hope and a future and possibilities. And it was then that I realized, though I didn't know his story, that there are too many factors in our society that can lead someone to engage in criminal and violent activity. And I saw that as an opportunity for us to come together over a common ground, to create a new way of interacting between police and community, that it's too late for Greg and it's too late for Jarvis Hall, but it's not too late for others. And what if we could come together and work together to prevent this pain from happening to other people? I think we'd see a lot less divisiveness between the police and community and create something better together.
Speaking with Kassy Alia, the founder of Heroes in Blue, just talking about the loss of her husband, Forest Acres police officer Greg Alia, back in September of 2015. Seems like only yesterday, even for me, and we didn't know each other. The reason I know you is because of that situation, as I'm sure a lot of the folks you probably met through that. But so, and I guess that question, I didn't mean to get off track. I was curious. I was curious about how you balance that in your head and your heart. That's all.
It was not easy. And I think that's important to normalize that, like, that process. People called it forgiveness. For me, it was empathy, really, like trying to understand and find healing and perspective on my own heart. And it took a lot of intentional work. And it was very difficult. And it was transformative. From that experience, not only did I find healing and peace within my own heart, but it also stimulated a major change in focus in the organization. So we rebranded from Heroes in Blue to Serve and Connect with that in mind, knowing that there are those who are called to serve and we want to help them connect.
We're going to take a quick break on Carolina Cares and talk a little bit more just about Heroes in Blue, the rebranding, the Serve and Connect portion, and a couple of events coming up for this great organization. Stay with us here on Carolina Cares.
Major key alert, don't ever play yourself. Life is like school. You will be tested, so pass it.
Learn the real major keys to getting to college at GetSchooled.com.
Stay focused. Now that's a major key alert.
Brought to you by Get Schooled and the Ad Council.
Carolina Cares on this Sunday morning. I'm Tyler Ryan, speaking with the founder of Heroes in Blue, now rebranded, known in a lot of the community as Serve and Connect, Miss Kassy Alia. This organization was born out of tragedy over the death of her husband, Forest Acres police officer Greg Alia. Maybe as therapy, a way to put pieces back together on some level, give something back to Sal, your son, to say this is what Dad stood for. Now you've rebranded as Serve and Connect. So what was behind all that? So as I shared a moment ago, it was driven largely by this realization that there's an opportunity for us to come together in a new way. We can't, when you look at the divisiveness, you have so many things that are broken, but what we can do is create something new. And that's what we're focused on, creating something new opportunities for us to interact in a new way together, a way that is focused on building stronger communities, increasing access to resources for those people who need it most. I remember I was talking, so I'm a psychologist by training, a community psychologist, and I was doing some work in Sumter a few years ago, and it was involving police and health, community health, and I was telling Greg about it, and I was like, Greg, you should do this, and you should do that. And he was like, Kassy, I'm the cop, and you're the psychologist. And too often we expect police to be everything to everyone. There are social workers, there are medics, there are psychologists, they're everything, and they can't be.
But what they can be is an important conduit of resources. Every day, police are coming across people who are in the greatest need, those who are hungry, those who are poor, those who are homeless, just to name a few. And they often go out of their own way and own pocket to help. We want to help them do even more of that and even more effectively. So how we do that is by connecting police with community organizations that have those resources, that can be that everything to everyone. So we are increasing more access to resources, helping police get them to the hands of people who need it most. So police are change agents in our community. And by doing so, we're creating a new way of police and community working together that is more unified.
We as a community look to police officers to be everything, to be clergy, to be a psychologist, to be the hero, to protect me, to whatever. That's a lot to ask from one human being, first of all, in my humble opinion. But, in law enforcement, it's called a tool bag, where when you go through training, you go to the academy, you have an FTO, you have a mentor, you've got all these people you look up to in a department, the guys who've been on longer than you. And it's called putting everything in your tool bag. And not every tool works every cop. It's like any profession, I suppose. But to have those tools that you're saying serve and connect, putting all those tools into that officer's tool bag is only going to make it better, because that tool bag, the bigger that tool bag is, the better that officer is going to be equipped to handle, any situation, a distraught person, a homeless guy, someone who maybe has some mental issues, maybe just a hungry kid, maybe somebody who just hates the police, but he needs help. And now he's finding himself in a situation where the police have always been my enemy, but I need you today.
Yeah. Something that drives me crazy a little bit is during discussions around what police community relationships is what police should always do differently. Like, it's like, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. First of all, most of the time, police are already doing that, I've come to learn. But also with these discussions, like how committed are we to actually finding solutions? And how committed are we to actually being a part of the solution? I think this is kind of a weird analogy, I guess, but I think of my little boy. He is the light of my life. I love him with every inch of my heart. And the only thing I want in this world is for him to be happy and to thrive. So I try to be the best mom I can. Sometimes I run out of tools in my toolbox. And Sal compared me to Donald Duck the other day, saying that Donald Duck gets mad like mama, because sometimes I get mad because I just feel exacerbated. I'm like, what do I do? Right. And if we think about, first of all, we should take a more strengths-oriented perspective to most people and look for the good in people. But you look at police. I have never met a single officer who didn't get into this line of work because they weren't called to serve. They want to make their communities a better place. Maybe there are some out there who don't. I haven't met one yet. So there are people these people are servants. They're called to serve.
It's not for the money, I can promise you.
Yeah. We just want to help them be able to do what they're called to do in the first place and be a part of advancing and expanding their toolkit.
Speaking with Kassy Alia, Heroes in Blue, also known as Serve and Connect. You can check out heroesinblue.net, and that'll bring you to the Serve and Connect website. I know you've got some events coming up. We're out of time, unfortunately, this morning. Guys, a couple of great events coming up, but I would love for you to take a couple of moments this morning. Just on your smartphone, whatever you're doing, check out heroesinblue.net. See if the last 30 minutes have touched your heart. Take a few minutes, understand the mission, become a part of the conversation, as opposed to the divisiveness that seems to be all too prevalent, right?
Absolutely. Be a part of the change.
All right, Kassy, I appreciate your husband's service, your service, continued service.
Tyler, thank you so much for your friendship.
You got it. Stay with us, guys. Carolina Cares is coming back.
Knowing your breasts can save your life. Go to knowyourgirls.org for the facts you need on breast health. Brought to you by Susan G. Komen and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Carolina Cares. Thank you so much for joining us. You can hear the pain in Kassy's voice, but you can also hear the strength, right? Hearing the worst news about her husband being killed, Forest Acres police officer Greg Alia. You hear that in her voice, but yet there's that strength saying, you know what? I'm going to make something of this. This did not happen in vain, and I'm not a victim. Thank you so much, Kassy, for sharing your story with us and just the amazing things that you are doing in the community to bridge that gap. That's going to do it for Carolina Cares for this week, an iHeart Media production. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll talk to you in 7 days. Be good to each other.